Hey, you're what?
Right.
I ordered lunch.
Oh, nice.
The time is, oops, I'm sorry about that. The time is 1 PM. I will call the KaneComm board meeting on July 19th, 2023 to order. Can we call the roll, please?
If I pronounce your name wrong, I apologize.
Mhm.
Fagel,
He's not here.
Fonstock,
Here.
Hain,
I love you.
Caius,
Present.
Krull,
Here.
Lancaster,
Present.
Molina,
Molina present.
Parsons.
Teets here.
Pirog, Guthrie.
Here.
You have a quorum in the room.
Thank you. We will go ahead and get started. I don't have any correspondence to share. It has been a while since our last KaneComm board meeting, and I apologize. We will get more into that as the meeting progresses. We do have some new board members since our last meeting. I thought it would be helpful prior to approving of the minutes if we just kind of go around the room and introduce everybody. So, you know, the background and where everybody's from. I will start with Chief Krull.
Thank you. Dave Kroll with the Maple Park Police Department. Excuse me. Roger. Drink. Joking today
Yeah,
too.
Trail mix, deadly.
Yeah, trail mix. So Roger Fonstock with the IT department and building management.
Go ahead, Andy.
Andy Bauman, Radio System Administrator, KaneComm.
Mike Teet, Chief, Burlington Fire. Burt Lancaster, Fire Chief, Fox River and Countryside.
Chris Caius, King County Board and King County Forest Preserve.
Myrna Molina, King County Board, Chair of Judicial and Public Safety and Forest Preserve.
Thank you. So we have the minutes from our last meeting, which was August 26, 2021 in the packet. If I could get a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll move the minutes from August 26th.
All right.
Caius Wood second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I don't see anybody here for public comment. Is there any public comment today? All right. Moving ahead, our staff and activity reports. So in the agenda packet, I just included the last couple months of our activities. As you can see, we've had a steady increase in both calls for service as well as our phone calls. In our phone calls, I recently did something at Public Safety Judicial, and there was also mention of it in the Daily Herald and Kane County Connects about just the volume of accidental 911 calls that we were receiving. So when I looked at the phone statistics and I saw like a 2,000 phone call increase, both there's an increase in 911s, there's an increase in outgoing. I'm like, where is this coming from? And looking back, there seemed to be a phone software update in May of this year that causes cellular phones to more quickly dial 911. So if you're mowing the lawn and you have your cell phone in the cup holder, that motion or that button is pressed a number of times, it will automatically call 911. There's another feature. It's a crash detection on the Android phones, which is causing the phone to call 911 as well. So, the discussion about this increase is, for every call that we receive, even if it's an open line, that generates a call out to make sure that someone does not have an emergency. So it's just to be aware of these features on both iPhones and cell phones and, set your settings as preferred. It's great that they're there to work in an emergency, but, set those settings as preferred because they are resulting in a number of accidental 911 calls. So as it relates to our phone calls, if you're seeing a dramatic increase, I can tell you after seeing 864 calls for service about 911 investigations, that is where the increase is coming from. Any questions about the statistics for calls for service or phone calls? All right, moving on. In addition to that, we have been very busy since our last meeting with just a number of projects. And I know that I see many of our board members in different capacities. So rather than just repeat everything we've been working on for the last year and a half, I do have a slide here that details that. You know, some of the larger items that we've been doing along with software upgrades for all of our technology is we have implemented next generation 911. We did that in September of last year. So that's something we've been working towards for years. KaneComm was number 18 in the state. It is state mandated, and we were the first 18 to get on board with that. TriCom they did it at the same time. They were just a couple days before us. As you know, KaneComm and TriCom back each other up in terms of 911 centers and services. We run a kind of a redundant setting, so we have backup capabilities. So we both went live with next generation 911, and we have gotten 3 grants in the past years to pay for that project as well. So it was funded well. We are live on it. It required upgrades of our CAD system, upgrades of our recorder system. In addition, we've done, the Live Golf event. We coordinate communications there. We've converted our analog phone lines to IP or SIP based phone lines. The reason this project was so important is the cost of the analog lines had gone up to $600 per line per month. So that would be for a 10-digit emergency and non-emergency phone lines. It was $600 per line per month. So now moving over to the IP Flex, it's about $600 per month. So we have quite a cost savings there that alleviates some money for other things that we need to do. We've implemented Crew Force with a couple of our fire agencies. We did implement CAD to CAD. CAD to CAD is the ability to send call for service tickets between other Tyler New World CAD users, which include Elgin and Quadcom. So if we have a driving complaint that starts in our area and they move over to another jurisdiction, we can transfer that call for service over to that neighboring communication center, which saves some of the workload and redundancy. So any other questions? I mean, there's that whole list there. I'll take any other questions on activity that we've been doing in the past, I guess, year and a half. Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Could you please explain what the Fire Mobile Crew Force is?
Yes, so Fire Mobile Crew Force is a tablet-based application where it takes our CAD data and implements it on a tablet. So our fire user, Chief Lancaster from Fox River, they are one of our users, and they can see live updates from the CAD system on these tablets and pertinent information. So as we're updating the ticket, maybe it's about patient care, maybe it's about a structure fire that's spread, to another area. They are reading those updates live, as well as having them come over the radio. They do have some increased functionality where they can make themselves en route and on scene, or we can set a geofence where it senses when the rig is near, where the fire truck is near, and will automatically put them on scene. So some of these automated processes or communication between the technology saves steps and radio transmissions for our team.
Works out great.
Mhm.
Good.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then we are also looking at implementing Mobile Shield Force, which is a cell phone application with our probation department. So when they are going on their home visits, which they call out on the radio right now, they'll be able to generate that call for service themselves. They will be able to see that alert themselves, and they will simply have to tell us on the radio that they are on a home visit rather than having perhaps a longer radio transmission while they're out doing these visits. So it will be better for them as well. And that project's already paid for. We're just working on implementation right now. And then the last one, which is new, is our ESO CAD integration with the fire records management system. So our 4 fire agencies in the north, which include Hampshire, Pingree, Fox River, and Burlington, have moved over to this emergency services reporting records management system. And there is a CAD integration that we can do. So all of their activity that takes place and we track within the CAD will then go to that record system. So there is a cost for that integration, and we're currently exploring where we'll get that funded from. But that's one of the next projects coming up. Yes,
I'm
Madam Chair.
just curious on how this works because it's wonderful technology. The Mobile Shield Force. So it's on your your iPhone.
Correct.
And my iPhone shuts down all the time. Then I've got to put the key code in. But if it's an emergency and I want help like now, and you know, you can press this little thing, but can you, as a probation officer, seeing that there's a potential threat, instead of having to text, is there like a button that you press to say, track me, you know, here I am, because they already know where you're going, because you have to log that in, but just a quick response so that it's an immediate response to say, I need help, because you may not be able to, you may be attempting to diffuse a situation and say, wait a minute, I got to make a phone call.
Correct. So they carry radios as well, and they have an emergency button on their radio. So if they were to activate the emergency button on their radio, we will be able to see their device, since they're using Shield Force, on our computer-aided dispatch system map. So their device shows up on the map, and if they activate the emergency button, we can see their
But
location.
on their
Yes.
radio.
Another thing, and this is Roger from IT and Building Management, but how frequently for probation do you do like the safety and status checks?
Same as our deputies. So when they
every
initiate a home
minute?
visit, yep, and they go on scene, the first initial 4 minutes, we status check them. And then they will advise if they need to continue those status checks or if we can stop doing them. So we'll do an initial 4-minute check. They will answer either 10-6 and over the radio.
Okay,
They will advise that they're safe. Sometimes they say no checks, so we don't need to continue the status checks, or we'll set it for 10 minutes or 20 minutes when we check them again. If there was some reason that they would be out there for kind of an extended period of time, even though they would say no checks, we would still check on them.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
So it's a safety feature though that I think is
Correct.
important.
Correct. And we do that with all of our police subscribing agencies, including court services, probation, civil process servers.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
All right. Any other questions on these projects? All right, Blair, can we go to the next slide, please? Oh, yeah, sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. I'm used to public safety judicial when we don't have the remote. So another way we've been spending all of our time, especially for the last year and a half, is hiring, right? We've been taking many applications and we've had a huge focus on hiring. My deputy director, Sarah Stofa, is usually here with us today. She is currently working on the council and helping train a new employee and helping us coverage, which is not typical for us. So just some stats to share and talk about the hiring process as we have questions that come up about it. Our hiring process includes an initial, like someone applies to KaneComm, we send them a typing test. If they pass the typing test, they move on to a skills test. If they pass the skills test, we send them a background packet and then we schedule an interview. And while they complete the background packet, maybe they bring that to the interview. If they pass both of those portions, they move on to a psychological exam with our King County Diagnostic Center. And after they pass the psychological exam, they move on to the physical and then we hire. So it's an extensive process. The timeline used to take quite a while. We have taken it down where we can get somebody hired from the application to starting at KaneComm within 3 or 4 months, which is the fastest it's been. But I do want to share the stats on how this looks. So through in 2022, we did receive 90 applications. Out of that, when we sent the typing test, 36 didn't take the test, 54 did, 25 failed, 29 passed. So you can see the extensive time it takes to go through the hiring process. And that's something our management team, which is Sarah, Chris, and myself, manage on top of all these other projects. It is our focus. It's where we spend most of our time on our personnel and our hiring. Whether we have one application or we have 15 applications, we are constantly going through the process. So we tried something new in 22 as well, and we did Indeed. And as you can see, Indeed produced interesting results. We got 219 applications that we received from there. Out of that, 174 took we sent the typing test to 174, but only 39 took the test. So I think there's some parameters that exist within Indeed that automatically send us the applications, but we're just not seeing some of the follow through on that we would want to see for these positions. So out of the 20 that passed the typing test, 8 signed up for the skills test. 4 applicants didn't show up that day. 1 emailed that they couldn't attend. 3 completed the test, but they failed. So how we advertise our positions is we post on the Blue Line. That's a paid subscription. It's also used for like a police or law enforcement website. We do a push through social media. KaneComm does not have a social media page, but I'm thankful to all of our subscribing agencies that share that for us. We push it out to the subscribing agencies and they share it on their social media page. The county website, we always have these applications open. We always have our post open and we refresh it every couple of months. And then we post on Illinois APCO, which is a 911 organization. It's posted there as well. We are currently hiring for full-time telecommunicators. I did just post for part-time telecommunicators to see if we had any interest in that. One of the requirements for part-time is we would ask that they have a minimum of 20 hours a week. And we would like them to come in with at least 2 years experience because training is 6 to 9 months. And that would be extremely difficult to do with someone who didn't have experience and was only working part-time. So Sarah's not here today. She is working the council. We are working on training. We are working on hiring. And that's something we're going to continue to talk about moving forward. We do have our union contract, which we're currently in negotiations with. I am confident that when we get that resolved, it will be a help in this process. But that is the current situation. Does anybody have any questions about the hiring process? Yes, Ms. Gums.
Thank you. I'm not on this committee, but I noted here that, and I'm going way back in time now, but the typing test, it looks like we're losing half of the applicants from the get.
Immediately, yeah.
So I will share with you that I barely passed my typing test. And I don't know if that's something that can be adjusted or not, because I ended up being not such a bad dispatcher. But if we're losing half of our our applicants on that typing test, maybe that's something to reevaluate.
Very true. We have reevaluated the test. So the test is it's not like a narrative, right? It's not, there's a story format that you can type and keep along with. We actually do a mix of addresses, similar to what they would actually use when they're typing. And that tends to, I think, surprise people because it's instead of, the narrative form, it's like 174 South 5th Street, and then they have to keep up with that. I believe the minimum is set to about 35 words per minute. And they do get 3 attempts.
Yeah.
So it is something that we can look at. We have had questions come up from applicants though on, I'm not sure it didn't work, but I did try this on my iPad. So we're clear that you should not be using anything but a regular PC and keyboard to do this type of test, because that's what you would be doing in the comm center.
And I just wanted to throw that out there because,
It's a great point.
I mean, if we're losing half of our applicants just based on it, I learned how to type. It took me a while, but I did end up being pretty fast at typing. So just a
Nope,
thought.
that's a great point. That's a great point. And for those that don't know, Ms. Gums was in Aurora Dispatcher for telecommunicator for
About 20 years.
20 years. Yes. Any other questions on the process? All right. Thank you. Moving on. I will add though that this is extremely time consuming. So with all those other projects, which take just a tremendous amount of resources, configuration, everything technical, and then we have quite an extreme workload as it comes to this continuing hiring process. So, a big thank you to my management team, which includes, Sarah Stouffer, our deputy director, Chris McMeem, our operations manager, for having a constant focus on this because it is our biggest priority. Something else we are working on is our space. So many of you have been within KaneComm and have seen that we did a great furniture project back in 2021 where we redesigned the communication center. And when we did that and we purchased new furniture, we went from 6 positions up to 8 positions. It did alleviate some space back towards our offices. Poor Chris and Sarah, you can see that picture below, have been sharing this small office for about 1.5 years. and working very closely together. So we do have a resolution that passed. We worked with purchasing, and we're going to be building a third office space back in that empty space that's near the office where you see the file cabinets. That does not solve all of our space concerns. We currently don't have a great meeting space, which is why we usually meet in here. For our subscriber meetings, we previously used our OEM space, but they've hired some additional employees, and the EOC that we used to use to meet is no longer available. So we'll use the auditorium. Sometimes we'll meet at a restaurant or something, like for a fire meeting following the chief's meeting. We'll just stay there and meet. We'll try and go to other departments. I am going to be moving my office, either long-term or temporarily. We'll see how that goes tomorrow, to a space back here. It's not preferred, but I need to turn my office into a training room. As we are hiring so many new applicants, we have 3 test stations that we use with our new hires to learn our computer-aided dispatch system. It's kind of the simulated, they listen to 911 calls, they type along. So we go through a 3-week course with them that way. And when they go out onto the floor with their certified training operator, they have some basic preliminary skills that they know how to use on the floor, which makes it a little easier to hit the ground running and answer 911 calls. But we don't have a space to put those 3 stations. So after a lot of brainstorming, it just made the most sense for me to relocate. And then we've ordered 3 small desks, and IT is, thank you, Rogers Group, going to put our 3 test stations in my office. So the space concerns continue. Andy, if you've seen his office, he is still under the stairs of the yellow house, just beyond the beaded curtain. So while he claims he likes that space, I don't know. But he has a large amount of equipment in there for our infrastructure, which is not ideal. So that's just an ongoing conversation. It's just an ongoing conversation. We do have interviews on Friday and Monday, and our offices are not big enough to hold these interviews. So I looked at the yellow house. The rooms are reserved, the auditorium, the rooms are reserved. So we just get creative, right? Maybe we'll go to the sheriff's office, but the space concerns are definitely something that we will continue to have to address in the future. Any questions on that? As part of that process as well, we are going to build a quiet room for our employees. Currently, they don't have a private space. If they can use the kitchen, but that's open to everybody. So if they're working long hours and trying to talk with their family, I mean, others are using that path to go down the hallway into the bathroom, or OEM on volunteer nights. Sometimes they have more people in there. So there's just not a great private space. So where you see that recliner, our employees have made kind of their own space that they try to make private, but it's in the middle of the lockers. We actually purchased that recliner for them. That was part of TC Week recognition. We're going to be moving those lockers out of there, walling off that space, and that will become a quiet room and a break room. All right. Any other questions on that? Well, my last point in our activity is something that we're working on tomorrow. We are going to be implementing what's called a geodiverse 911 circuit. We had an issue with some equipment after implementing next generation 911, where there was an outage in the middle of the night, and it impacted not only KaneComm, but also our backup center TriComm. And that was concerning because we're supposed to back each other up. So why did we both go down at the same time? The outage was only 10 minutes. It's something we've discussed at extent with our 911 statewide administrator. And after some research, it found that both centers come out of the same central office. So tomorrow morning around 9 a.m., we'll have AT&T on site, as well as some other vendors remote. And we're going to be moving our circuit off of Canal Street. So TriComm will go off of their circuit, KaneComm will go off of a second circuit, and then we will have our redundancy back. And if there is some sort of outage, then it should not impact both of us. But that's something Director Shell Street from TRICOM and I have been tracking very closely and pushed AT&T to put into play. It seems that those that are already moved to Next Gen 911 and the EZNet, that geodiversity hasn't been talked about too much. So we are one of the few centers that's requested to do this, but I'm excited about that move tomorrow. Any questions on activities? All right, moving on. Our KaneComm budget is in the packet. It does look a little strange in some line items. We have some line items that look very overspent, and then some other line items at this point in the budget year that look very underspent. So at the end of June, we're at about 58% for our expenses, which is right where we should be this time of year. The line items that are over budget, we do have an emergency systems telephone board meeting tomorrow, our ETSB meeting, and I have 2 resolutions that I will be bringing to them for reimbursement. I've already paid the invoices, so they're in our June budget. One of those resolutions is for just over $123,000. And that is for our Motorola lease and, our Motorola maintenance and the lease of the AT&T circuit for 2 years. And then the other expense, which is about $14,000, is for a Motorola integration. It required a small upgrade that we needed to do for our logging recorder. So that money, after that resolution is approved, will go back into the budget. I do have another just $14,000 to $15,000 of other expenses throughout this year that qualify for ETSB reimbursement. So I will be bringing that to the accountant and asking for reimbursement on that. So I anticipate about $150,000 going back into the budget. So at 58% at this point of the year, money's going back in. I don't really have any budgetary concerns at this time. But I will keep the committee updated as we move through that process. I did just send out the subscriber fees for 2023, so you should be receiving those invoices shortly. I sent them out yesterday. They were planned up about 5% over last year, which was just kind of on trend with what we've been doing. The subscriber agreement is something that we have to get resolved soon. I had hoped that our union contract would have been resolved also soon because the revenues and expenses need to be balanced. So we hope to have that for the group by our next meeting. Any questions on the budget? Yes, Madam Chair.
It appears that, if I'm reading this correctly, you are spending quite a bit of money on overtime. Is that because you don't have enough staff?
Yes, that's due to vacancies.
And
And it is summer, so there's quite a bit of vacation time.
well,
Yes.
that is planned. That can
Yeah.
be planned. And that's time and a half.
Or double time for anything over 12 hours.
And do you have people here working unless there is a weather emergency?
Mhm.
Or an emergency? Do you have a lot of people working over 12 hours?
Unfortunately, yes. It's something I'm trying to resolve in our future contract, where they would only be working 12 hours at a max.
Are there guidelines for that? Do they have to take a break?
Yes, they do get breaks. They get, if they are in 16-hour, well, in an 8-hour period, you get a 15-minute, a half hour, and another 15-minute. With a 12, as you go up to 12-hour, you get another 15-minute. And then as you would go up again, you would get another half hour and another 15 minutes. So the equivalent of the 2 8 hours. Agreed.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I have,
Yes,
I
Ms.
can't,
Gums.
I can't,
Yes, I
sorry.
know. Mhm.
I wholeheartedly agree that no dispatchers should work more than 12 hours. I think it's unsafe. I've got a lot
I
of
also agree.
research into that. However, an idea
Mhm.
is, and I don't know if we do this already, so correct me if I'm wrong. Are we targeting the high schools for applicants? And the
We
reason I
are.
say is they're good.
We are. So we participate in a number of job fairs as well as community colleges.
Mhm.
That's something Sarah, Chris and I do. So we've gone out to Caneland and done their Fox Valley Career Center. We do presentations and tours with them. We're trying to work with ECC and their public safety campus on the curriculum that they do with their telecommunicator courses. So we've also been out to Hampshire High School and does something with their government class and done a presentation. This is an option for a job as well. So there's the public education component is still happening. I'd prefer our telecommunicators be doing part of that, but as staffing gets tight, that comes down to management. So we are still out doing that.
Great.
Anything that we can do to increase applications.
Yeah, I just think that's super important and,
I agree.
you know, I'm sorry. And this, I just want, as a former dispatcher, this is not unique to Kane County. The shortage is across the board, an issue, but you have to think outside of the box and thank you for
Correct.
doing that.
Correct. And I will say, I mean, as Sarah's on the council right now, and Chris has been on the council the last couple of days, and I have been on the council as well, as recently as last Friday. You know, we are aware of the overtime and we have done what we can to also minimize the overtime, which includes management working the council to help prevent somebody else from a long hour. Management is currently helping to train new employees, which is not something you necessarily see at every 911 center. When there are storms, Sarah, Chris, and I will come in and be an extra hand. Maybe we're not the fastest, but we can certainly make outgoing phone calls. It's something I agree with you. I do not agree with this. Sarah had put together a 12-hour schedule for all employees in the months of June and July. And the employees did not agree to it and they did not want to do it. It's something that took her 2 days to put together and just an exceptional amount of work. And they all responded no. So we keep trying, right? We will always continue to think of creative solutions. But as we talk about scheduling, you know, are we just going to do it? Are we going to ask for options? That's where we're at. And we are currently negotiating, and that is a topic of negotiations.
Well, thank you for stepping in because that doesn't often happen, like you said. So, and it matters to dispatchers.
Thank you.
One more question, please, Michelle. Is this reflective, the staff shortage, is that reflective with TriComm, was it KaneComm, Kendall County and QuadComm? Are they also challenged by getting people to work in this position?
Yeah, I think we all kind of take our turn. I think it ebbs and flows. I think I know TriComm has had challenges in the past. Their new contract took effect maybe about a year and a half ago. They are not having some of the same challenges at this point that we are. I think Elgin might be. I know Aurora is hiring quite a few telecommunicators, but honestly, that's one of the challenges too, as we do our testing. We're all kind of working with the same pool, which is why some of our starting wages are so important. And I'm thankful that the union agreed to do an MOU with us while we're still in negotiations, because our starting wages were $41,197 and surrounding centers are in the 50s. And although hesitant to make that agreement at this point, you know, with training being 6 to 9 months, we can't afford to wait until we had the whole contract complete. We need people in the door now. So we were able to get an MOU with them to at least raise the starting wages, which we saw an immediate increase in applications. So we did test on Monday with 11. We've done previous testings as well. And we do currently have 2 telecommunicators in training. And we have seen a dramatic increase in applications. Now I think we all just kind of, it depends on the comm center and when it, I guess, affects you. And I have not had this type of issue in the last 10 years that I've been in an administrative role. But like I said, I'm really hopeful and confident that as we get the contract resolved, that will help. And applicants who are coming in are very aware that they can shop around and look at other communication centers. And I have never had applicants in the past ask me for copies of our union contract. copies of our scheduling. Like they're coming in prepared and they're asking a lot of questions. And sometimes it's not just the money that they like the schedule better. And so that's been a topic of conversation with our staff. Any other questions on that? All right, moving on, I will get to communications center updates. Andy, will you talk about equipment?
Absolutely. Over the past year, I think what we've most heavily been involved with is working with AT&T, as Michelle mentioned a couple times, replacing various circuits, telco circuits, phone lines, things like that, that used to come into the center over old copper lines. AT&T has a fiber optic solution that's replacing all of the old copper facilities. So far, we've pretty much replaced everything coming into the center, including 911 and administrative landlines, as well as the biggest project, I think, was replacing all of the copper circuits going to our 11 of our 13 communications towers spread throughout the county. That took some time working with the individual municipalities for each of these towers. We have equipment on Elburn, Montgomery, Sugar Grove, water towers. So working with AT&T to be able to install those fiber circuits, depending on the municipality's requirements, was a little time consuming for technical drawings, things like that. But we did make it through the process. All of the fiber circuits are now installed, and now we're working through updating our equipment at each tower to be able to connect to these new circuits. So that'll be beneficial once we do get acquiring the equipment's a little time consuming, as everybody knows, ordering delays, things like that. But we do have 2 sites up on the new fiber circuits now. They're working very well, so we're pretty happy so far. We're looking forward to, I believe, 3 or 4 more sites worth of equipment. So once that equipment arrives, we'll be able to get those sites on the fiber circuits and continue migrating off of the old copper T1 circuits, which are quite costly. So that'll be the other nice thing. Once we get onto the fiber circuits, we'll see a significant savings from AT&T versus what we're paying for the T1s and the much lower cost of the fiber circuits. So that's where we sit there. Everything else is status quo. All the equipment's working, even through the big storms we've had recently. When the tornado came through Campton Hills and caused all the problems up there, we only lost 1 tower for about 3 hours. All the other towers kept clicking right along. No loss of airtime or any technical issues there. And other than that, it's just been routine maintenance, checking things out, making sure they're working okay, and support to the subscribing agencies as they need for various repairs, reprogramming, and things like that.
I will add that we have one more project that we're working on for the radio system. We're going to be doing a study with TriComm Dispatch, talking about how we back each other up and how we work together. We will be evaluating what equipment do we have? What equipment do they have? Is there any cost savings anywhere by the sharing of equipment? Where does it make sense, to be separate or together? I mean, both agencies would see a cost savings in doing something like that. We are 2 completely separate entities, but we ran into one situation where we have a location in Geneva and they're just down the road. Does it make sense to keep them down the road or to share equipment? Both agencies use Starcom primarily for police. They still have their VHF in place for fire. We still use VHF for fire. So we'll just look at both agencies separately, coverage currently, both agencies together. And does it make sense to partner anywhere and share the cost at any of our infrastructure? So that's a project that's coming up as well. Any questions on that? All right. Roger, can you give our ETSB update?
Sure. So we'll be meeting, I think it's tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Right? So
Yeah.
as Michelle had mentioned, there's a couple of reimbursements for the KaneComm, and I don't know that we have any for TriComm, but as far as reimbursements go, just for everyone's knowledge, the funds from the ETSB are the wireline wireless surcharge monies that come in from the state. And we're one of the few agencies actually that pass all of that money through to TriComm and KaneComm. We don't have really any administrative overhead. So any money that we have on account for the agencies are available to them. So Michelle is just taking some of the capital money and the reserves for KaneComm that she has and asking for them to be reimbursed. So those will be accepted and reimbursed. We do that all the time. So I think that's a good thing for the 150,000, I think, 140,000 that they're asking for reimbursement. That should take place this week. As far as revenue goes, the revenue's on track. We collect about $3 million a year for the ETSB surcharge money. And that money gets prorated back through to TriComm and KaneComm on a per line basis. Other than that, the ETSB is doing well. We have a full appointment of board members now, and we're getting ready to look at the budget process with the board in probably the next 2 meetings. We'll be going through the budget for ETSB. But again, that consists of basically agreeing on the division of the surcharge revenue and the pass-through formula that we calculate, and then we budget for ETSB operating expenses. We have an accountant, we have an outside auditor that we use to audit the funds, and we file the state 911 reports with the state police. That's really our only overhead. I think we have a couple of maintenance contracts and insurance for the ETSB, but it's pretty light, and a small percentage goes to overhead. The rest of it goes straight through to the agency. So you're welcome to attend the meeting. I believe it's tomorrow at 1:30 at the Batavia Fire Station 1.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Seeing no questions, I'm assuming there's no other public comment on non-agenda items. I do have a need for closed session today. So may I have a motion to
I think
move
it's,
into closed session?
For the discussion of,
Yes, for the discussion of, I would like to go into closed session for the purpose of the appointment, employment compensation, discipline, or performance or dismissal of specific employees.
Roger Fonseca. I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any opposed? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye. There's a mic over back there.
Oh, yeah.
The lunchroom upstairs has a mic.
Yeah, luggage.
He's gonna
pull
a
juice from and start pounding on the table.
Pretty as it used to
Yeah.
You're gonna start pounding on
Okay,
the
the
table.
smell was.
Michelle, have a great day.
Yeah.
Roll call.
All right, we're back in open session. Can we call the roll, please?
Fagel, Fahnestock,
Here.
Kane, Caius,
be. Guys present.
Kroll,
Present.
Lancaster,
Present.
Molina,
Molina present.
Parsons, Teat,
Here.
Pura, Guthrie.
Present.
You have quorum in the room.
Thank you. Any other discussion before we adjourn?
Fonstak, make a motion to adjourn.
Guys second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?